Hey everybody, Edo here, and for this week's League video, I want to talk to you about the GAMA Trade Show. Now, I don't usually talk about cons and shows and the like, and perhaps I should, but I wanted to do a video specifically about this show because for me, it was my first time attending the show. I knew very little about it, and it's unique compared to your typical con. Right? So the GAMA Trade Show is really a show for retailers, manufacturers, and publishers. It's not an open show. To attend, you need to be a member, which is $300 a year to start. So it's an upfront investment into the organization then to be a part of it. And in terms of attendance, again, lots of retailers, tons of retailers. Like the audience, the con goers are the retailers. They're the stores, the mom and pops, the bigger chains. You have the distributors. You have companies like impressions and aggregators or consignment. And then you have a hodgepodge of manufacturers who are there who are talking and trying to get you to use their factory. You have some press, but really not much. It was like Dice Tower, BGG, Game Boy Geek, Undead Viking, and a handful of others. There are a couple other smaller folks, but it wasn't like you see at Gen Con where you've got everybody and then everyone who wants to be a reviewer and then everyone else, right? There was a design track, a small one, and there was a handful of designers, but this wasn't really a place where you're running into designers. There was an Unpub and a bunch of other conventions that designers were at last weekend. It was in Vegas. It's been in Vegas. It's going to be in Reno next year. So that's sort of the base of what this convention is. So for sure, if you're just a gamer or perhaps just a designer, I don't know if it's something that you'd really need to or want to go to. But if you're doing publishing and want to understand that space more and get involved, I thought it was really cool. I'm going to be going again. I found the connections and learning opportunities to be huge, but that's in the category of publisher land, not really in the category of designer land. Now, having said that, it's basically split into a number of seminars and sessions and sort of groupings, and they do have a design track, manufacturing, retail, that kind of thing, where they talk about, for the retailers, it's like how to have your store on social media, how to attract customers, what are you going to do about web sales, like all that kind of stuff, and publishers working with distributors and all that. And then they have the exhibit floor, which does look like your typical floor, except that you've got many more distributors than you might often see. And people aren't like demoing their game in the sense of like, here's a game you should play as an individual. You're showing off your game as a product, and you're showing it to retailers and distributors to pick up the product. Perhaps this is also another place to get connections with international folk. It's no Gen Con or Essen, but there were a number of companies that were looking to pick up games for different regions and that kind of thing. So, so that's the show floor. Sort of cool. It's 1 to 6. That's crazy. I don't know if it's a Vegas thing or what, but that to me, that was like, I don't have to be standing from 9 to 6. That's awesome. That's awesome. And there's not great gaming space as well. Like a casino is not that pleasant a place to like game. You can, and they certainly had an upstairs room, but at night that upstairs room was reserved for people who had sort of bought tables. Otherwise, it's like there's a little like a eating area, nosh, and there's a couple other places that people are doing, but like with everyone gambling around you in the middle of a casino, right? Like so, like. And people have hotel rooms, but again, it's just not like a Gen Con or any gaming convention. So, the thing that was most awesome to me about the entire experience was, in fact, engaging and talking with retailers. If you do a Kickstarter, if you're working with impressions or PSI, you never deal with these people. You never talk to retailers. You're never connected to that part of the chain. If you design a game and ship it to a publisher, you're never connected to that chain. You're connected to the gamers, sure, but rarely retail and distribution. Now, there are some people who take it upon themselves to not only to direct sales their game. So they make their game and then they say, I'm not going to use impressions. I'm not going to use a publisher. I'm going to sell to store across the United States. That person knows these people. Everyone else, never. And so for me to talk to people who know the products that I've made, understand them in their store and have their store experience and communicating their personal experience, I thought was really powerful. They're part of the ecosystem. They're a major component to the game business and the game industry, and to interact and understand what works for them, what doesn't, was really eye-opening. Not even to say that necessarily any or all those things I can do, but just to hear things that frustrating them when it comes to boxes and box sizes and orientation, hearing things about how, what they react to when they hear about Kickstarter or other crowdfunding, and how they think about promos for stores and demo copies and the value of demo copies and getting involved and having a connection with those stores. It was, I sort of stretch around a lot of different parts of the industry, but for me, it was just so cool to be able to hear and talk to the people who run the stores in mass, right? I know my local guys or gals or whoever, like the 3 stores in my vicinity where I used to live. Like, I have a good relationship with those people, but not in this sort of broad, hey, it turns out Herbaceous is huge in Portland because 7 stores in Portland came over to tell me, right? And I think that it creates connection. So the long story here is, if you're sort of in that spot where you're working with a distributor, you're working with a publisher, but you're your own company, your brand, you're making multiple games on Kickstarter. And, it's not that big of a group, but if you're in that group, I highly recommend checking it out. I absolutely recommend checking it out. I think it's a big step to filling out that sort of track and that line from game creation to customer's hand. Also, just a lot of little learning tidbits around, the conundrum on how much you should print, who's going to pick it up. When a store's thinking about a game, how many games are they thinking? Great opportunity to talk and ask questions. And the tracks are great too. You have to want to go to those certain tracks, right? It's not the typical tracks you'd normally see, but very insightful and useful information, especially if you're connecting with that business. Now, if your Cards Against Humanity, they're not there, right? They've skipped this group, but I think it's valuable, and I would absolutely recommend checking it out. I had no idea what to expect. Impressions had an exhibit space where he opens it up to a number of the people who were involved and use him. So there was like 10 of us in there and facing the crowd. I think it's worthwhile. Now, and you don't need to have an exhibit booth, but looking around, there were small companies with small booths that are the when you go to like in Origins, when they're just like the little table and there's like a line. So I bet you that isn't too big of a price to go do that. Again, I think this is a small targeted audience of people who don't already go, who probably should go, but I absolutely recommend checking it out and considering it for next year in, I think, Reno. So subscribe, share all that good stuff. Most importantly, play some great games. Thanks.